Hey, good evening, everyone. I am Daniel Miller, resident tech guru at Wealtheo, and it is time for our monthly Q&A with our resident Renegade capitalist, founder, and CEO, David Thomas Roberts. And before we get started, let me go ahead and remind you, we will be taking your questions live, although we do have pre-submitted questions that people have sent in. However, if you have some questions that you would like to ask, feel free, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we post a new video. And additionally, if you are watching on Facebook, like, share, comment, all the Facebook things, right? And all of the chat from both YouTube and Facebook will aggregate over in the side. So your comments, your questions could have an impact on what we talk about tonight. And so without further ado, let me introduce our friend, CEO, leader, and Renegade capitalist, David Thomas Roberts. Hey, Dave.
Good evening.
All right. Okay. So we've got tons of questions tonight. But anything you'd like to say before we kick off?
Well, crazy election season, so it's crazy. It's crazy time of year, at least here in Texas, with the primaries coming up, and so I'll be glad to get those behind us. But
Yeah.
I lit up a cigar in everybody's honor, and so I'm ready to chat.
So so for those of you that are watching, if you have questions, you have until that cigar dies or until we run out of pre-submitted questions. So get them in the chat. So Dave, let's get started. Let's tackle our first question tonight, which comes from Kent. Okay, this is a good entrepreneurship question. Kent wants to know, what are your top 5 must-do recommendations for operating your own business?
Wow! Not for starting, for operating. Is that right?
For
Is that the right
operating
answer?
your own
For operating,
business. Top 5
uh,
must do.
you number one, always know your exact cash position. You always have to know when how much cash you have at any time. In all my businesses, the first thing I do every morning is look at my cash position and all my bank balances of all my companies. So that's number one. I would say number two, know how much money is owed to you in accounts receivable if you carry a business that has accounts receivable. How old are those accounts receivable? Because cash is king. And one thing I've always been pretty good at is collecting the money that's owed us. So know how much you're owed. How old is it? How old is the money that's owed to you? In other words, um, don't let your receivables age. The longer your receivables age, the harder they are to collect if you're carrying receivables. Uh, I would say next, and since those are two things to look at, is if you have made a bad hire, and I'm not so sure, Daniel, if I would move this to number one, because this seems to kill businesses uh, at a rate that's never talked about. But the one thing that I've learned in operating business is the very nanosecond, the very instant, the very moment that you realize that you've made a bad hire, end it. Because I've learned that usually if you have a bad hire, it can't be rehabilitated, and you're only going to make the situation worse. Um, and that's probably up to number four. So I guess the fifth one would be make sure that your customers are happy. Um, know if your customers are getting what they've been promised, if your customers are satisfied with the job, the service, the product that you're provided. And that means that as the owner, you actually have to talk to your customers. I've never depended on employees alone to tell me whether our customers are happy. I like to reach out to the customers myself and get honest feedback. And believe me, a lot of people will appreciate that. They'll want to give you honest feedback. So there's my 5, Daniel.
Okay, that is an excellent 5, and Kent, we hope that squares away your question. And of course, if not, you can always submit. And remember, we do post these on the Wealtheo website, And comment is open for Wealtheo Plus subscribers. So be sure to go down there, comment, let us know what you think. Okay, you're going to like this one, Dave, because I know this one's near and dear to your heart. And I know you and I have sort of suffer from the same affliction here. But this is from Blake. Blake wants to know, how do you decide on what tasks to outsource and what tasks to do yourself? Sometimes my time seems more valuable than the task, but my revenue stream isn't bringing in enough for me to afford to hire staff.
The first lesson I learned on that topic was the moment that I sold my weed eater and my lawnmower and figured out it was better to outsource that than to do it myself. If you look at what your time's worth and spending for me to spend 2 or 3 hours doing my lawn, it was much cheaper and more efficient to outsource that. And really, it's that same. You can use that same formula in almost anything you do. I look at it throughout my businesses. There are certain things that I will outsource because either we can't do them well or we can't do them efficiently, or it would cost us more to do them internally. So it's a matter of cost, it's a matter of efficiency. And I'll give you one example: is payroll. Very rarely in any of my businesses are we doing payroll internally. That's so cheaply outsourced. That's an easy thing to do, especially nowadays with all the different payroll apps there are. Um, as far as any of the processes for, depending on what you're selling or manufacturing or producing, you always have to be weighing what when it becomes, you want to control the quality control. um, it may be a little bit more expensive, but you may want to have that in house. But again, it's really, if you take my example, which is the purest form of this, and say, okay, is it cost more money for me to mow my own lawn, or is it cheaper for me to outsource that and have somebody else to do it? Figure out what your time's worth. And it'd be the same thing for any of your staff, or anything that you do in your business. If somebody else can do it more efficiently and less expensive than you can your own, then outsource it. Although the only thing I would tell you to be careful with that is that, you rarely will see me ever outsource anything to India, China, or any place like that. I don't like to outsource internationally.
Okay, got it. So, hey, drilling down on that a little bit. From a prioritization standpoint, if someone like Blake here is specialized, is there wisdom in perhaps dividing those things up and outsourcing smaller elements of everything that they do?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, for instance, I can give you another simple example. If we were building a software program and there's somebody that specialized in a certain language that need to be built in, that either would take me too long for our staff to learn it, or it would take too long or too expensive to find the talent that knows that programming language, it would be cheaper to outsource it. There's all kinds of examples like this, but yeah, if it's specialized, it could be as simple as, um, I could go out and, let's just say I had a tree stump in my yard I wanted to grind down and get rid of. I could go out and rent equipment and try to learn how to operate that myself, when it could be just as cheaper and probably a lot less dangerous for me to outsource that, have somebody come in and grind that stump down, and me not be operating machinery that I have no business operating.
Got it. Got it. Okay, well, let me go ahead, Dave, real quick, and remind everyone, if you're just now joining us, if you put your comments on Facebook or in chat on YouTube, we will see them. And if you do have questions for Dave, be sure to drop them in there. Entrepreneurship, personal finance. If you ask boxers or briefs, he is not going to answer it because that's just a lame question. But keep it centered around what we're talking about here, and we'll be more than happy to fold those things in. And remember, on Facebook, like, share, comment, and then of course, if you're on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And of course, if you'd like to know more, if you'd like to access the courses at Wealtheo, head over to Wealtheo Plus at wealtheo.com/plus and get subscribed today. Okay, Dave, here we go. Sam wants to know. Let me pull up my handy device here. Sam wants to know, speaking of the website, I was interested in the article, What you don't know about money could be costing you millions, talking about mistakes to avoid. However, where do I even begin to figure out what I don't know, or how to start understanding personal finance in some order?
Well, it's amazing that you asked that because we have built the application specifically for that purpose, which is Wealtheo. The Wealtheo financial literacy courses are unlike any in the world. If you want to learn personal finance and you want to become financially literate, you literally have that at your fingertips with wealtheo.com. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. We spent a buku of money to develop this and have a first class financial literacy course literally you could take it in a few weeks. You could be a financial literacy expert.
Yeah, and Dave, another way that could be answered was, Sam, you were literally on the website. You read the article. It's all there.
Right.
It's all there on the website that you
And
were
really,
on.
and listen, this is not like any textbook. We took real life experiences of things that we've done, experiences that I've had, the failures, the successes, and very simple, straightforward things that you're not going to get taught probably in any school. And these are real life scenarios, and they're very practical. Daniel, would you agree? I mean, these things are it's really practical knowledge.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I would totally agree that Sam was literally on the website where those things are. Right there at your fingertips. No, look, all kidding aside, what Dave said is absolutely the truth, right? And the beautiful part is you can get all access with Wealtheo Plus. Just get over there. I mean, there are courses that cover every aspect, and I'll tell you, Dave, to particularly to this question, and feel free to build on this, but so much of the material in those courses will help you understand, help you, to quote the question, figure out what you don't know, because that really is what so many people suffer from, right? We just don't know what we don't know.
Right. Right. No, I mean it's a great resource. To be honest with you, I wish I'd had this when I was a young man. Um, and I wouldn't have made as many mistakes as I did learning some of these things. But now we have that knowledge to impart to others, and I love to share that knowledge, and because it is not readily available. And so you would think with the age of the internet that all this stuff, but go try to find one source to put this all together. And really, I mean, Daniel had to remind me, but I know it doesn't cost much. It's probably less than you're spending on your cafe lattes, or it's definitely less than a pack of cigarettes a month, I think. I don't know. I smoke cigars. Uh, uh, and it's extremely affordable.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And look, people could go find out right now. Head over to wealthio.com. You can browse through the store, get the courses a la carte, or you can go all access Wealthio Plus for just $9.99 a month. So check it out, wealthio.com/plus.
$9.99 a month. Are you sure we have that price correctly, Daniel? That's like two Starbucks coffees, maybe one and a half Starbucks coffees a month. When a lot of people do that a day.
Inflation, man. I mean, yeah. But look, I mean, and that's the point. I mean, where else can you get access to all of that material in with one subscription? I mean, it is the one subscription that can absolutely change your life and your financial health.
No doubt.
Okay. Okay. Well, Sam, we hope that squared you away. If you want to know what you don't know, head over to wealthio.com/plus, and we will help you learn what you don't know and teach you how to overcome the obstacles. All right. So, fourth question. This is from Laura. Laura wants to know, I'm currently an employee with a 401k through my employer, and I would like to save/invest more money from my paycheck to plan for retirement eventually. Is it better to increase my 401k contribution or to invest the extra monthly funds into stocks or bonds?
Uh, well, I'm going to be very careful giving investment advice because, for one thing, I don't know the entire picture. I don't think it was divulged, Daniel, how much debt she has,
No, that was
and
not in the question.
yeah, and I would say that the debt is a serious factor on that. And before anybody starts, and I would even say before your 401k, to work on getting out of debt, at least everything else possibly but your mortgage, before you start looking at putting money in a 401k and investing. So um, now, if the assumption is made that you're debt free or that the only debt that you have is your mortgage, um, age wasn't mentioned, income wasn't mentioned, and some of your financial goals. So it's almost impossible to ask, what's better, stocks or bonds? And there's a lot of experts that have a lot more knowledge on the timing of those than I do. Again, it comes back to a more practical thing. Are you out of debt? Because that is the most important place to get before you start thinking about seriously investing.
Yeah, Dave, and I think let's have that conversation a little bit more. So, and I know we cover this in some of the courses, but there are people out there that are indeed investing and are in debt, and because they're in debt, the interest rate is outpacing the return on their investments, and so frankly, they're just moving backwards.
Well, I mean, look at even the inflation rate today. So even if
Yeah.
you're saying, you've lost 7% of your dollars that you earned last year just with this Biden administration and the inflation. So it's not just the interest rates, but the inflation is eating it up. So you've got to outpace inflation for you to whatever investments that you make, whether it's a 401k or whatever, just to keep pace or to outpace inflation. So, that's something that we haven't had to deal with in quite a few years. And it's new to a lot of folks. I've lived I'm old enough to have lived through some high inflationary times, especially during the early 80s, and where this was an issue. And it's very hard. It's like a treadmill that you can't get off of. And again, this especially during these times, the focus should be reducing debt, getting out of especially credit card debt, which is predatory. Out of credit card debt, getting out of all your high debt instruments, and then and only then can you start looking at what investments make sense to offset inflation.
And that's a good opportunity to talk about the fact that the first course that we ever developed at Wealtheo, the flagship course, is called the Debt Freedom Course. And it does just that, gives you strategies that you can utilize to get yourself out of debt.
That's correct. I will mention one thing, and this is something you take. You probably need some advice on, but when folks are getting an income tax return every year, that means that you're paying more too much in taxes all year long. So why not adjust your allowances, your withholding, if you're a W-2 employee, and take that money, use that to get out of debt, and that way, now you won't get as big a tax return, but you have the money, you have the use of that money all year long instead of Uncle Sam using it interest free.
Good old Uncle Sam.
And Uncle Sam doesn't know how to spend it either. Obviously, the
Right.
more
No,
the more you give him, the more in debt he goes.
exactly.
Which
Okay, Laura.
I think today, Daniel, the news was that America for the first time surpassed $30 trillion in debt.
$30 trillion in debt. As a matter of fact, maybe we should send the debt freedom course up to the Congress critters in Washington, D.C.
Yes, yes, sir. There's a whole bunch of folks that have been in Congress for a whole lot of years who don't understand financial literacy, or um, they have disdain for you and I, or the little people, and feel like spending your money freely at whatever shrimp on a treadmill project they want to spend it on.
Now I'm visualizing a shrimp on a treadmill. Thank you.
Well, that was an actual project. I think $300,000 was spent in one federal grant. But we could mention the $80 billion worth of military equipment that was left in Afghanistan. So when the government comes back to us and asks us for more money, and they're leaving $80 billion worth of military equipment to our enemy, you have to wonder what gives them the right to ask us for any more money.
Yeah.
Just saying. Not trying to be too political, but just saying.
Look, I mean, it's literally the thing I talked about in the book. In the book that I wrote, was the money that they blew on the studying alcoholism among prostitutes in China. It's like that has zero bearing on my life, right? But that was my money that they spent for that study. So
Well, probably came from the same source that the gain of function was sent. The money was sent to China that was used to come up with this COVID deal that was released on the world. So we could really get into some serious
uh,
issues today. But
I know. I look.
we just want you to get out of debt.
That, that's right. Oh, mercy. Okay, so Laura, I hope that gave you some guidance and assistance, but definitely do what Dave said. Go take a look at your debt as a part of that picture, and if you find that you are in debt, check out the debt freedom course on Wealtheo. So you can go to wealtheo.com and into the store, and you can find it there. Okay, here is a question from Rachel. Rachel says, "Oh, your favorite subject. I'm preparing my taxes for 2021 and quickly realized that I should have done a lot of things differently last year with my business since I owe more than I would like to cut a check for to the IRS. Boy, that's a lot. Yeah. What are some practices that I could start today to have more business deductions for next year?"
Did 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 I understand the question that she was already in business, or she was just talking about her business in general?
I'm guessing business deductions just kind of gives the indication that Rachel is in business, had to pay taxes last year, hates to pay taxes to the federal government, probably for the same reasons that we talked about with the previous answer, and wants to know what she could start in January right now, so to get more business deductions, so as not to have to be in this same situation to give Uncle Sam money.
Well, let me start off with this because assuming she's already in business, but this is for the folks that aren't, that are W-2 wage earners or something. About the only real tax break that American citizens have anymore is to have a home-based business because of the deductions that are allotted in the current IRS rules on home businesses. And I think every person, and I would advise this to everybody, that they need to have some kind of home-based business. And I'm not just talking, I want to be careful about what I say here because you don't get a home-based business just to do tax deductions because the IRS is going to wants you to make sure that that is a legitimate business, that you're actually trying to make a profit. And there is some argument, and there is some interpretation about how long before that business has to make money before the IRS considers it a hobby. But if you understand that you're going to have deductions with a home-based business that you're not going to have if all you are is a W-2 employee, then you start looking at things like that you're what does it take? How much space in your house do you need to operate that business? Even if it's just a desk in a room, what percentage of the square foot of the mortgage, of the insurance, or of your lease, property taxes, all take into consideration. And if you're looking at everything that you do is tied to doing something with your business, and again, I got to be careful. I'm not trying to tell you to take deductions that aren't legitimate or that don't tie back to the business that you're trying to run, but you understand you can be creative and you can find ways um, to make um, deductions work. And I'll give you an example. So my wife Rose is involved in businesses with us. If we go out to eat and we're talking about one of the businesses that we have together, and we talk about business, that is a staff meeting. Okay, if that business, if we were talking about staff, we're talking about our businesses, that could be considered a staff meeting. And so you look at every aspect of your life and how it's tied to your business and make sure that you're taking your legitimate um, legal deductions for those. Again, the only reason I say to be creative is because be creative in your thinking, because for the dinner that I went to tonight that I had with my wife before we had this call, talk about our business. Um, what I paid for that dinner, some part or all part of that is deductible based on the discussions we were having about running our businesses.
Okay. So there you go. Get creative. Look for anything that is business related that you can deduct, and be a little more strategic, right?
Be more strategic. The other piece of advice I'd give you is I want to make sure, and, people will tell your accountants, your CPAs, your tax attorneys will tell you that that is one of the areas that gets looked at pretty hard for audit. Don't be afraid of an IRS audit. I've been through many. Okay. And save every receipt. Okay. I mean, every receipt. Uh, because if you have the expense and the receipt that backs it up, if you were to get audited, chances are those will be allowed. They won't be challenged. And I became all you have to do is go through one audit and have most of your expenses, legitimate expenses, denied because you don't have receipts for them, even though they were put on a credit card, or even though you have a canceled check for that. For the IRS, that's not good enough. You need to have invoices. I make our vendors, I get invoices, I get receipts, I keep them all. And that's proved to be a savior for us in audits that we have had. Hopefully you'll never have to go through. I think one time my tax attorney called me the most audited man in America. Um, that's not a badge of honor that you want to wear. But if you did, like I did, I want to defeat those audits every year. And every since the 1 year that we got disallowed on most of our expenses because we didn't have the proper bookkeeping,
Mm.
that has never happened to me again. And I'm not afraid of the IRS.
Well, there we go. Great advice. Document everything. Okay, Dave. Let me do this. Let me just remind everyone we actually do have some courses related to taxes. And Dave, you wrote a book about the origins of the income tax called "Death of Liberty."
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm somewhat of an expert on the income tax and how, what the purpose of it is. And because originally when I was writing that book, Daniel, that it was to expose some of the tactics of the IRS. I was caught up in the Tea Party scandal where the IRS was targeting political enemies under the Obama administration and auditing donors and Tea Party patriots and so forth. And we went through a lot of that, and it started for me really to investigate how in the world that the United States of America, with the founding fathers that we had, who, by the way, had never intended for there to be a direct tax like that on citizens. How did we get there? And the research I did on it was, for me, it was fascinating to me to do it was 2 years worth of research. That book is sourced. I don't know if I have a copy. I have a copy of it right here. We've got every source on this book. It's called I don't know if you can see it, The Death of Liberty. Okay. I will warn you, you read it, you're going to get mad. I was mad doing the research on it. But our income tax is the largest welfare system that we have, where direct payments are made to folks like illegals, and they don't go through any type of welfare system. These are direct taxes and EITC credits and other things. But it's interesting to learn how we got there. And this came from as a result of both parties, not just the Democratic Party. The Republicans had a hand in this too, specifically who I say used to be one of my heroes, Teddy Roosevelt, which I have a completely different view on today after this research, and you will too after you read the book. So understand, this is about controlling us. There's so many things that it violates. It violates the Fourth Amendment, and I'm not one of these people that tell you don't pay income taxes. You won't win that battle. Um, this has to be changed from the inside out. But understand how it works, understand what they do, and learn how to play the game. And just cover yourself in receipts and legitimate business deductions, and you have nothing to fear.
Super good advice. Okay, let's get down. Final two questions on the hit parade, Dave. Here we go. Jamie needs some advice. Jamie asks, how do you overcome the constant pressure to make ends meet or live paycheck to paycheck? I have a budget and I'm doing well staying within the categories, but I feel I've hit a ceiling on my progress.
Well, let's make a couple of assumptions. If the assumption is that there's nothing you can increase no way to increase the income, you've got to find a way to get your monthly expenses down to about 80% of what your net take home is, because you're always going to be hand to mouth or waiting for the next crisis to occur that puts you in a crisis. Things like the transmission going out in your car, the refrigerator breaking, your air conditioning unit going out, the type of things that are medical bills, veterinary bills, the kinds of things that happen when you can at least afford it. So I would tell somebody if they haven't found a way to increase their income, whether it's starting a business, having a second job, um, whatever, getting a raise, changing jobs. And by the way, we didn't talk about this, Daniel, but this is probably the best time in history for you to increase your income simply by changing jobs, because the labor market is so tight, and you would have an advantage negotiating um, your labor rate in a new job. But if none of those others can be fixed this way by increasing your income, then you've got to find a way. You can't afford the lifestyle that you're living if it's still hand to hand, and which means that some tough choices have to be made. Um, Maybe you can't afford the type of car that you're driving. Maybe you need to be driving, sell that car and drive a used car. Maybe uh, some of the when I take a look at somebody's finances, when they get naked on their finances, and we can really dive into it. And if you're tracking every dollar you spend, you're going to find out there are places where you're probably spending money that you don't need to. Take the Starbucks example we used earlier. Okay, that same $4 cup of coffee or $5 cup of coffee at the local gas station is probably $1.25 or 99 cents. And you think this is trivial, but every dollar adds up, every penny adds up, and you just gotta. If it's that tight, you literally do have to look at every penny, track every penny, where are you spending it, and start making some difficult choices, especially when it comes to entertainment. Uh, dial back the number of channels you subscribe to on your TV, on your dish, on your Direct TV, on your Xfinity. Um, there's just got to be places that you got to trim if you can't increase income, because it just means you're living above your lifestyle. And if you're not living on 80% of your income, you're leaving no room whatsoever for the inevitable that we all know is part of life. Unexpected things happen, unexpected financial crises happen. And what you don't want is having a small crisis like a blowout on your car, having to replace a $200 tire and get that fixed becomes a major issue. You don't have a vehicle to drive because you can't afford to replace the tire. Daniel, I'll never forget this. When I was a young man, there was this gentleman I knew that was driving this really slick Mercedes sports car, and he had an accident that was his fault in a supermarket parking lot, and that quarter panel on that Mercedes stayed crunched for about 3 years. And I finally asked him, I said, "Are you ever going to get that fixed?" And the truth is, he didn't have the money to pay the deductible to fix it. So that, here he is driving a Mercedes that he couldn't afford,
Mhm.
driving it with a crunch quarter panel because he's living above his means. And I mean, that's an extreme example. But again, the key is to get your expenses under 80% of what your take home pay is. That was a long winded answer.
No, that was a great answer. And now, Dave, because of you, I'm going to go get rid of my car and get a unicycle. Thank you.
Well, look at all the health benefits attached to that, dude. I hope you don't have to far go.
I know, right? The health benefits of me on a unicycle. That is a visual you will not be able to get out of your head for quite some time. You realize that? Kind of like the
Well,
shrimp on the treadmill for me.
I'll try.
Turn, turnabout's fair play.
That's great.
Okay. Well, hey, let's get down to our final question of the evening. This one is from Cole, and this is a good one. A lot of questions sort of surrounding taxes and debt tonight. Cole asks, he says, the debt snowball principle is paying off the lower balance credit card first. The debt snowball principle of paying off the lower balance credit card first is a little confusing. Can you explain why it's a better option since interest is occurring on my other credit cards?
Well, there is two schools of thoughts of that, and there's other financial experts that you'll hear. You can go online and find in about 2 seconds that prefer that you pay down the highest interest rate first. For me and for most people, it was important to have small victories first. And in the grand scheme of things, if you have a huge credit card with a big high interest rate on it, it may take you a long time to pay that down. And so you're not going to really feel the snowball effect because it's going to take so long to pay that interest rate down. I want small victories, small battles to win the big war. And for me, and for most people, they don't have the discipline to stay at it long term on a high rate. For instance, Instacart. If you have a $30,000 balance on a 29% interest rate, you're not gonna feel it. It's gonna take you a while, depending on how much money you're throwing at that every month. And again, there is no snowball effect from that because it's gonna take so long. So if you pay three or four other smaller debts first, you're able to throw more money at the higher interest rate, and you'll actually catch up. So again, it's for me, it's about small victories and about having legitimate, measurable um, progress that you can celebrate with your spouse, your partner, and say, here's another credit card that you can cut up. Here's a debt that you can eliminate. And I really psychologically, I think it's important to have those victories. So for me, and I wouldn't, if somebody's disciplined enough to go after the higher standard, it's obviously it's your choice. But my preference is always to knock out the smaller ones first.
Okay, great answer. And I hope that got your question answered, Cole, and hope clarify some of that confusion. Dave, that's it. Casino dealer clap.
Wow, those were great questions tonight, Daniel.
Yeah, that was good, and and I think it reflects a bit what's on everyone's mind. We had some entrepreneurship questions, some debt, some taxes, and uh, I think this is kind of where people's minds are at right now. There is a good amount of economic uncertainty.
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, it's we got some trouble in paradise in DC. I wouldn't call it paradise, but trouble in there, trouble in Austin, in the state capitals. And our elected leaders do not have financial literacy principles. Why it's even more important that we do.
We should make them all go through the debt freedom course. I said it, and I'm sticking to it.
I agree. It should be a condition for running for election. To be honest with you.
Right, right. Well, Dave, hey, thank you so much for answering the questions tonight. And these were, as Dave said, these were great questions. And again, we do this every month, so be sure you get your questions in. You can always send them over to team@wealtheo.com. And of course, when we get this posted, throw your questions in the comments underneath it. It'll be embedded in an article. And of course, we'll look through those. We have commenting turned on for all of our articles for Wealtheo Plus subscribers. So be sure you check that out. And a reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to Wealtheo Plus, head over to wealtheo.com/plus. That is wealtheo.com/plus. Get all access. We're building a brand new shiny dashboard. And I cannot wait for it to be finished because, it's me, resident tech guru, trying to make your life so much easier through the implementation of technology. That
And,
almost sounded like an ad for IBM.
and let me tell you, Daniel's the best in the business at this. So he's taken our ideas and he's spun these up so that anybody should be able to get to these and use them easily, and it works great. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thanks for hosting.
Oh, Dave, you're going to make me blush. Please don't make this weird. No, thank you. All right, everyone. That is a wrap for this month. Thank you so much for being a part of it, being on the Wealtheo team. And again, if you have questions, send them over to team@wealtheo.com. Drop them in the comments and subscribe to Wealtheo Plus at wealtheo.com/plus. From me, from Dave, the entire team at Wealtheo, have a great, prosperous, successful, and wealth building month. And we will see you again on our next live Q&A. Good night, everyone.
Good night.